so much for joining me here again today as I get to talk about one of my most favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them. I love sharing them. If you would like, follow me on social media. I have an Instagram at jvelez62, a Twitter at Art of Jvelez, and a Pinterest, JoseV2163. I share my artwork, and on Pinterest, I actually have a lot of pins from some of my favorite artists like Jim Lee and Arthur Adams, who, by the way, does this amazing cover here. So, we're going to view classic X-Men versus regular X-Men. Now, here's what kind of here's why I'm going all the way back. I already have done Giant Size X-Men 1 through Classic X-Men, so I've showed people the three different versions of Giant Size X-Men 1. So I was going to just do the Dark Phoenix saga. But then I said, too much happened that leads up to it, so I decided to do John Byrne's run. But then, too much actually has occurred, so I decided, let me just go back all the way to the beginning. So, like I said, I've already done Giant Size X-Men 1 / Classic X-Men 1, so I figured let's just do these. And so Arthur Adams does this great cover here. Classic X-Men was how I got into know more about the X-Men. This is how I was introduced to these great stories. So Gil Kane and Dave Cockrum do the cover. Cockrum was the inker of this cover. And at this time, X-Men was the hot book, and these came out right during the Mutant Massacre. So the Mutant Massacre era is when Classic X-Men launched. So basically start off here with Professor X, and there's a mirror behind him, so this is his head, so that's why you're looking at everybody, so everybody's looking at themselves through a mirror. And so he's facing the reader, and then the mirror is behind him. So he's telling the X-Men how proud he is of how they handled Krakoa and how they performed great. And then the future, which Sunfire cuts him off, says there's no future with Sunfire in the X-Men, and he wants nothing to do with them. He only cares about Japan. He asks the rest of the X-Men if anybody else feels that way. Colossus is like, I don't know. And Storm is like, hey, we've only been together 2 days. I'll stay. Wolverine also agrees to stay. Sunfire basically insults him on the way out and tell him, don't bother me again, basically. And so he asks Banshee. Banshee's not sure. Cyclops convinces him. He's like, all right, I'll stay. And so Xavier thinks everything's good, but the original X-Men are going to leave. I like how Dave Cockrum puts him in the corner so he doesn't have to draw the wings. So he's like, what? And the old X-Men tell him, hey, we were kids when you took us. Now we're big boys. And, it's time for us to get out there. Wolverine is very different to how he is now. He was a little bit more gruff. He wasn't, as a character, he wasn't this likable sort of person. He's like, whatever. As you can see here, split us. Go ahead and leave, but just spare us the soap opera. X-Men doesn't take kindly to that. Wolverine's like, hey, I've never carved up an icicle before. Cyclops tells them, enough is enough. Havoc, who is Alex Summers, Scott's brother, tells him, what's he gonna do? He doesn't know. He's unsure, so he ponders it throughout the night. The next day, he's still in his uniform, which they call a costume. I think that's funny. But he decided to stay. The part of the reason being is from up here is he can't control his eye beams, and just decides also that the new X-Men need him. tells him she loves him, and walks off. They all say goodbye. Cyclops like, all right, let's go. They're going to start training in the danger room, and tells them that the exercise is simple. Just got to walk across the room. Thunderbird's like, oh, all right, see ya. Then you kind of hear him, and then he's just booted out. And he lets them know this is a new page, by the way. I'll show you what the original page looked like, but these were put in for Classic X-Men, which is part of the reason I want to use Classic X-Men, because there's a lot more exposition, a lot of stuff that happens that builds to what will happen. So I wanted to do Classic X-Men instead of just showing you how these looked on the regular X-Men. So he kind of explains the danger room to them, and boom, this is a good hero of Crump, and Wolverine's like, the kid better not be squished, but he is okay. So, like, they're practicing the danger room, and this is also a new page. So we have, then now we go back to the original. This is then, we're back in the original. You can tell by the style, even though it's Dave Cockrum, this is a little bit more clean and refined, and this one's just a little bit more messy. So Thunderbird gets hit with a low-powered laser, and Cyclops kind of admonishes him, tells him, hey, if this would have been a real fight, you would be, you could have lost your leg. Thunderbird doesn't take kindly to that. He insults him, and Professor X uses his telepathy, tells Thunderbird to go to the infirmary, and he'll see Scott in the office, to which Cyclops you can see him there, Now this thought balloon was added for the Classic X-Men. It was not part of the original language, and so he's like, Thunderbird's kind of just like sabotaging himself. So throws shade at Cyclops, calls him a loser. Storm says he doesn't see a loser, sees a man. And then now we're in Professor X's office. Professor X tells him that the new X-Men are doing well, but he's like, between Wolverine and Thunderbird, it's just, he gets one under control and then the other one acts up, and it just takes all his time. He's not going to have any time for Jean Grey because, he's too busy with the X-Men, and what about his life? He doesn't know what to do, and Professor X needs him, but he doesn't want to force him to stay, but he really needs Cyclops to help guide these new X-Men. And then we have one more new page, which is this one right here. The Classic X-Men just fills in a lot of gaps that were missing through the original issues. So she's giving Moira McTaggart. This is Moira McTaggart up in Scotland. And this is Ron Sinclair, who's Wolfsbane. And you'll know Wolfsbane from the New Mutants and X-Force. And then I think she went to X-Factor. So her father is a minister who's really mean and crotchety. One of those super conservative type ministers. And tells her to Rain to go back to the house. Moira comments on what a nasty person she is, but she gets a telegram from Charles Xavier, and he's sending for her after all these years. So it's a nice bit because she just, in the X-Men eventually, she just shows up with no explanation. So Chris Claremont is basically having a do-over and decides, hey, let's kind of put in some stuff to make the continuity fit a little bit. So we got one more new page. So Storm's flying around. She sees Thunderbird's about to make a huge leap, and she uses a gust of wind to fly him, or to force him to safety. She's like, what are you trying to prove? And he says, Wolverine made that jump. And he says, well, his bones can't break. And he's like, anything he can do, I can do, basically. And she just ponders why, and just asks him, why are you, why do you need to do things better than everybody else? He just kind of admonishes her and says, hey, that's my business. So in the original, so if we go back to this page where Thunderbird says, oh, where Thunderbird walks into the room and he spit out what it was, is the next page, nothing wrong with it. But you can see why Chris Claremont decided to pursue the other route of kind of breaking things up, allowing time to, simmer why it was. Because then it goes straight into the next chapter. Or, sorry, not the next chapter, but it goes to the part where he gets hurt. And then it goes into the next chapter after that. So, it's a nice. I agree with how this was done on Classic X-Men. So on Classic X-Men, we just kind of then go straight to the next. So this is where it would have picked up after Cyclops was sent to the office. So that whole part with Professor X was sorry, with that Professor X wasn't in the original, so it went from there to here. So we're in Cheyenne Mountain with NORAD. That's, I think, it's a real place. I was gonna say Fort Collins, but I think it's in Colorado Springs. So he's bringing in the mail here and gives Harris his package. He's like, I wasn't expecting anything. Opens it up and just gets a little device that says press me, and they all think it's some kind of joke. So they say, hey, why don't you press it? Don't press anything that says press me. So he presses it, which opens up a portal that bring in the Anim-Men. So they quickly dispatch the people there, and he's calling for help. So help arrives, but the gorilla man here, Gort, takes care of them. And so Count Nefaria is there. He is who controls the Anim-Men. Count Nefaria, I think this is the second time he had appeared in the I think X-Men in the 20s. But then he appeared here and they never appeared again with the X-Men. He's been with the Avengers, he's the Iron Man, he's done other things, but this was his last appearance with as a X-Men enemy. So the Anim-Men's like, hey, how are we gonna the army's coming, and he uses anesthetic gas because, hey, let's put them to sleep as opposed to killing them. So, and he wants revenge for his last defeat. So yeah, X-Men 22 and 23 were his last one. He had the Anim-Men as a better group than what he used to have. And so he is going to begin his plan. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Cyclops is just pondering, which Nightcrawler comes in and just asks him about everything that went on and how it upset him. And Cyclops is like, it's my responsibility, ultimately. Professor X calls them and tells them, hey, go listen to this. And he basically demands a ransom from each country, and if he doesn't, he's going to launch the entire U.S. nuclear missiles at everybody. And so the Beast was with the Avengers during this time and basically says, hey, can the X-Men help? Because, the Avengers, we just too busy, can't handle it at this time. But he figured the X-Men could. Also, he doesn't recognize the new X-Men, so he kind of makes a, what happened. So Cyclops says, all right, everybody go except Thunderbird because he's hurt. But Thunderbird, of course, is like, you can't keep me from going out. They're Xavier tells him not to argue, so off goes the Blackbird. Wolverine says he's got friends there, and if he hurts them, he's going to carve him into pieces, which Banshee thinks he's killing him, or kidding, but the Air Force arrives. He tells them that the Avengers, he's responding to the Avengers call. They tell the General. The General says, all right, we'll take your help, but he makes a comment here. We knew that you muties would show up with Nefaria around. I don't trust you, but I guess he has no choice. So he says that Nefaria armed the Doomsmith system, which means that after a certain time in the countdown, it cannot be stopped. And so they need to stop him before then. So this bug lady, I don't really know their names, but she's okay. This bug lady tells Nefaria that someone's approaching. He sees it's the X-Men, and so he throws some missiles at them, and they deflect them, and one of them, though, manages to hit him. And then this portion here of the jet, they're able to escape in it, and Nefaria says, nope, not on my watch. Hits this button, which sends some kind of thing that makes it disappear, and the X-Men fall to their death. But we're not done, because classic X-Men had a backup story. Now, some of the stories are filler. Some of the stories do connect to later on. This is a filler one. So this is an adventure of Storm. It's when her and Jean Grey, after this mission, kind of, she goes to New York to visit Jean Grey. And it's always, these stories are really good. They're drawn by John Bolton, who's an amazing artist. They add exposition. They definitely add background. So Jean Grey, she's go to her new apartment, and they're gonna go shopping, and tells her to, get changed. And Storm says, okay. And there's a big flash of like lightning, and now she's naked. And Storm doesn't understand why people have to cover themselves up. Notice how the cup is still floating because she's using her power. Because she's a telekinetic and a telepath. So she gives her a dress for her to wear, and Misty Knight is her roommate. Misty Knight is part of the Power Man and Iron Fist, kind of. And Chris Claremont was writing that at that time. So, and off they go. Now, real quick, I want to mention something about John Bolton. I, for the longest time, had a lot of trouble drawing women's noses. I decided I would draw them like him. He basically just puts 2 nostrils. And I decided, that works for me. So, here are Storm and Marvel Girl after going shopping, but behind them is a kid in a skateboard who pushes Storm and Jean and snatches the purse. Marvel Girl goes after her. Kid makes a run toward the subway, and Storm just can't go down there because she's claustrophobic. And I love this, how it makes it scary for her to go in there. So Jean Grey snatches the kid. However, she wasn't mentally shielded, so when the people all bust out of the subway, she kind of gets overpowered, I guess, mentally, as everybody just, so she lets go of the kid, and goes up, and Storm is just kind of, you see her there, and Jean is like, she's super upset. She's like, I needed you, and she's like, forgive me, I do not understand, and she doesn't know, and she's like, reads her thoughts, and sees that she was buried alive as a child, which makes Storm very angry because that's an invasion of privacy. And she's like, "How dare you?" Uses her wind to kind of, because she's angry, so she's kind of causing the wind to blow and pushes her up. She uses her telekinetic power, but you can see the storm is brewing, starts to rain. She's like, "I can't believe that you did that. I thought we were friends. This is a betrayal. My secrets. You had no right to pry." She says she didn't mean to. She was just angry, and that she just it was an accident. She would rather not have her power than lose her as a friend, and she's her friend, and and Storm realizes, "Oh my God, I overreacted," and takes her down and says, "Oh, our clothes." She goes, "Some can be salvaged, other replaced." And she asked her to take her hand, and they're gonna go face the the dark together. So, good little short story. And then the next one is Morning, and if you've ever familiar with the X-Men, you know why that means. But we kind of end with this amazing back cover. This is what I mean about the nose. See, just kind of two nostrils, and that's how I draw my women. So, all right, Classic X-Men number 2. Like and subscribe. Thanks for listening.